Succulents are some of the most beautiful houseplants in my opinion, and especially if you can get them to flower. I once got my string of pearls to put out a couple flowers and it was just super cool. Now some of my favorites are the ones that are hanging in my south-facing window. I think it just adds a nice dynamic to my living room area. Plus I can't forget my jade trees. I've had them for a long time and I absolutely love them. Now I wasn't always confident in caring for these plants. It was only until I learned these two things that I started to better understand how to grow succulents. Now not every houseplant can be treated the same. Some plants prefer lower light and higher humidity, whereas succulents prefer something completely different. Now, when growing succulents in your home, light is absolutely the #1 factor for the survival of these plants. You want to make sure that you put it in your brightest unobstructed window. So that means with the blinds or drapes open, making sure that there's no buildings obstructing the sunlight or trees, that sort of thing. You want to make sure that you have bright light reaching the leaves of these plants. Most succulents require at least 6 hours of bright light throughout the day, and if you can't provide it with that light, then you can always supplement it with grow lights. Now I'm going to break down which window gets the most amount of light from most to least. If you're in the northern hemisphere, a south-facing window will get the brightest light for the longest amount of time throughout the day. So the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. So the sun will basically streak across the southern sky and your plants will get the most amount of light throughout the day. Now your next best window is a west-facing window. A west-facing window gets strong afternoon sunlight and it's a great spot for most succulents. They can tolerate this pretty well. If you start to see plants getting kind of like bleached out or yellow leaves, then maybe pull it back a little bit and just let them acclimate it to that light. Now an east-facing window gets bright morning direct light, and most like tropical plants, succulents, that sort of thing, they can tolerate direct sunlight from an east-facing window in the morning. It's not as intense as the kind of afternoon sunlight. So most like philodendrons, pothos, any type of tropical plant can tolerate direct light from an east-facing window for maybe like an hour or two. Now a true facing north window pretty much gets no light. It's very low light. Your plant is not going to do well, so I would just avoid a north facing window. And if you don't have a bright window at all, then like I said, you can always supplement it with grow lights. If you're unsure if your plant is getting sufficient light or not, just grab yourself a light meter, take the guesswork out of it. This one I got off of Amazon. It is the Doctor Meter. I also have an app on my phone. It's a free version and it's pretty comparable to the numbers that I get on this one. I use the foot candle setting. Now foot candles is not a true measurement of the amount of light that your plant receives. It's just the amount of visible light. So it's just a rough estimate just to help you determine the placement. Now you want to aim for high light, which is pretty much anything over 1,000 foot candles. I tested out my plants here in the middle of winter in my south-facing window, and it gets over 4,000 foot candles, which is really high light. It's good light for these plants, and that's pretty much what you want to aim for, is something over 1,000 foot candles. I have one of my jade plants underneath these Sansi gooseneck grow lights. They are 10-watt bulbs each, and this plant just absolutely loves it. If I put it near the leaves, it is times by 10. So right now, this is getting about 1,800 foot candles. So almost they're 2,000 foot candles. Up here at this leaf, it's getting around 4,000 foot candles. So this is equivalent to full sun in a south-facing window. Now, before you go run out and buy a bunch of succulents and then throw them right in your south-facing window, you just want to make sure that you acclimate them to the higher light or to direct light, because sometimes they can get burnt and scorched leaves just like any other plant. Now, this is my burro's tail. It does have a kind of like a sunscreen, a natural sunscreen coating called Farina. It is just a white kind of like dusting on the leaves. This protects it from the natural harsh elements of the sun. It's just something that it's adapted to with over time. But I guess the point of this is just acclimate it, maybe pull it back a couple feet from the window, and then just over the course of a few weeks, just put it in higher light until it's acclimated fully to full sun. Now the bear paw over here has these really fuzzy leaves. They are meant to reduce moisture loss, also redirect or kind of reflect light, as well as to help out with pests. So it is a pretty cool looking plant. The bear paw resembles an actual bear paw. It has these little claw-like leaves, and they're just super thick and plump. This one is actually variegated here, so I do have both varieties in the pot here. So just a regular and the variegated ones. The next secret for all succulents is they need a wet and dry cycle. So they need to be fully soaked or fully saturated when you water them, and then they need to fully dry out before you give it water again. Succulents love water, and after it rains in their natural habitat, they will store water in their stems as well as their thick leaves. So most succulents will have these thick, juicy leaves, and they store water in preparation for dry periods or dry spells. So it's no different in your home having that dry period after you give it water. Now, right now in the winter, I will probably water these plants maybe once a month. And in the summer, probably about maybe once every 2 weeks. Now, again, that's dependent on the amount of light that you have in your home, as well as your conditions. You can change the frequency of watering for sure. Now, like I said, all succulents have these thick, plump leaves, and that's how I tell whether they need water or not. I'll use all three of these plants as examples. Now, jades, they have these thick, plump leaves. You should not be able to bend or fold a jade leaf. I call this the taco test. If you can slightly bend it, or if it feels kind of soft and the soil is absolutely bone dry, then give it some water. Now, the same thing with these burro's tail. I just like to kind of feel the leaf. If they are quite firm or nice and plump, then it doesn't need water. If it's feeling a little bit squishy, or if it's wrinkled a little bit and the soil is bone dry, then give it some water. Same thing with this one. If it feels a little bit squishy, right now they're not too bad. I just gave this one water the other day. If it feels squishy or just, quite soft and the soil is dry, give it some water. You'll get the hang of it after a while. You'll know what a thick, plump, firm succulent leaf feels like about a day after you give it some water. And then once it starts to get a little bit soft or bendable, then give it some water. That's how I tell whether or not my succulents need water. Now, you definitely don't want them to shrivel up like little raisins. You're pretty much going too far. You're letting them get too dry. Give it a good soaking and they should plump up within a matter of a few days. Just as an example, I once had a Sansevieria in really low light, and I probably watered it once in like maybe 3 or 4 months. Once I moved it to a brighter location, then obviously the frequency of watering increased as the plant photosynthesized and it started to grow. So don't put your plants in low light, because if you put it in low light, the plant is not photosynthesizing. It's not drawing up that moisture for leaf growth. And if you water it more than it needs, you're going to kill it. So you're going to rot those roots and it's going to be a goner. There are a couple things that can help you achieve drier soil. There's pretty much 2 different types of succulent soil mixes that you can use. This is a kind of rocky, gritty mixture. This is good for airflow as well as drainage, so this will dry out pretty quick. Now, this is just the Miracle-Gro succulent and cactus soil. It is a peat-based soil, but it does have some perlite as well as sand in there. So I use both types, no problem. It just depends on, I guess, your budget and preference and that sort of thing. Now, pot selection can also help you achieve drier soil. Now, if you're using like a peat-based soil, terracotta is probably your best bet, just because it's quite porous and helps evaporate it out. I do use plastic nursery pots here as well. But again, all of these choices are okay. Again, it just depends on the amount of light and conditions that you have in your home, the type of soil that you use. Now, when choosing the size of the pot, you just want to go something slightly larger than the root ball. Otherwise, you'll just have a pot that's too big, there's too much soil, and it'll stay wet for too long. Succulents have very fibrous, thin roots, so they don't tolerate sitting in kind of soggy soil for really more than like a week. I brought this jade downstairs just to show you what it looks like for a jade plant when it needs water. So you can see we got a nice big leaf here, and I can bend it, or I can fold it like this. And now, if they are bendable at the top, then that's when I give them water. So if there's leaves kind of lower on the stem and they are bendable, but the ones at the top aren't, like they're very plump, then I'll maybe wait like another day or 2 and then I'll test them again. But when you have leaves at the top and you can bend them like this, they're not wrinkled or anything like that. They're a little bit soft, a little bit spongy, but I can bend it like this. This one definitely needs water, and the soil is absolutely bone dry. And I just use tap water. This is room temperature tap water, and I will just soak the soil. So I'll let it drain out the bottom of the pot here, and then I'll probably let it sit in this saucer for probably about 10 minutes or so and just let it soak up the water. So you can see it's starting to bubble down there. That is a good sign, just filling in those air pockets. And I'm going to use this entire watering can and just let it drain through. That way I just make sure that all of the roots are properly hydrated and saturated. I even have a couple little leaf propagations down here. This one's got little leaves starting, and then it's got these little roots that will eventually find their way down into the soil. So I'll just kind of bury it just a little bit like that, and that will grow into a new plant. And the rest is pretty much a piece of cake. I will fertilize these maybe once a month when they're actively growing in the spring and summer months. You can use pretty much any fertilizer. I just use Foliage Pro, but you can use Miracle-Gro like a 10-10-10. You can reduce that, you can cut it in half, just dilute it with water, and then just whenever it needs water, then use the water and fertilizer mixture. So that's pretty much it. As long as you can get those two things light and then give it a wet and dry cycle, you should have no problems with succulents. So I hope you found this informative and useful, and I hope you give succulents a try if you haven't, or if you don't have any already. So thanks for watching all my videos. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Appreciate all the support. Take care, everyone. Bye.